Welcome to the new series of Speak Up, the television and social media platform for Freemasonry in New Zealand. I am Barry Rushton, your host, and thank you for joining us this evening. Leading off our second to last show for this year is Russell Pratt. He will, in 2 days' time, be appointed the Divisional Grand Master of the Wellington region. He follows, of course, our other two Divisional Grand Masters, Northern and Southern, being previous guests this year. Closing out the show, it is our immense pleasure to have once more the current Grand Master of New Zealand, Most Worshipful Brother Mark Winger, who hands the reins to a successor in 2 days' time after 3 fabulous years at the top. The man responsible for a whole new way of thinking about Freemasonry New Zealand, launching the Speak Up campaign. This program is our second to last in the series for 2019, and I'm delighted to have as my first guest, Very Worshipful Brother Russell Pratt, the new Divisional Grand Master-elect for the Central Division of New Zealand. Russell, it is great to have you with us today. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Barry, and I feel a bit fortunate that I'm at the tail end of this series, so I've been able to see the great work that's happened with those that have followed before, that have gone before me. So it's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for those nice words, and it's been great to have you here. The reason being is that we have the three divisions in New Zealand: North, Southern, and the Central one. We had the Northern Divisional Grand Master elect on at the beginning. We had the Southern one on a few weeks ago, and you're the last one because it's in Wellington that the Grand Lodge of Installation is happening in 2 days' time, and so you'll be right worshipful instead of very worshipful.
Yes,
Congratulations, mate.
Yeah, it's a bit daunting actually, and I kind of almost feel like I'm the unexpected general in my own mind, because I have such a love of Freemasonry, but what I don't have a sense of ambition that's kind of created a story or a style for me to get here, and so it's kind of happened almost accidentally. And when I look at the pedigree of the people that I'm following, I've got to say it's pretty daunting.
Well, funny you should say that, and it's because now you are the fifth generational Freemason, and for you to now become what I regard as the third highest position in Freemasonry New Zealand, behind the Grand Master and the Deputy Grand Master, the 3 Divisional Grand Masters, is fantastic. And your father and grandfather would be just smiling.
Yeah, my dad would be just over the moon. Dad was, probably fair to say, his emphasis in Freemasonry was to be a foot soldier, and while he was a worshipful master of a lodge back in 1977, he really had no aspirations, although he was very supportive of pushing me. My grandfather unfortunately died 7 years before I was born, but I kind of hope he'd be quite proud as well.
Oh, I'm sure he would. What I'd like to do is know a little bit more about Russ Pratt, the man. Okay?
Sure.
We'll skip the early days, okay, and let's just jump into Featherston. When you're about 6, you and I have a little bit of a bond with Featherston.
Yes.
So tell us about some of if you can remember, the early times in the Southern Wire Rapid.
Yeah, weren't times so much simpler then. I can remember we lived about 3 or 4 kilometres outside of the town. Dad managed the local dairy factory just on the banks of the Te River, and my weekends, even up until a 13 or a 14-year-old, consisted of getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, laying gin traps in the paddocks next door, a little bit of flour and aniseed to attract the possums, and then going back at night or the following morning and collecting whatever I'd killed, and taking it into town once a week for the man who paid me $1
for the skins.
In fact, he used to pay me $4 for the skins, but then he gave me a deal whereby I just gave him the dead possum for $1, and he did all the work, which was a much better idea, because all the work was in skinning them and stretching them and drying them. And when I went to primary school in South Featherston, which was about maybe half a kilometre from the dairy factory, we'd walk through the paddocks, we'd walk through the cow poo. I mean, it was just what you did. It was what living in rural New Zealand was like then.
And so then, those school days came to a bit of an end, and I believe then you did quite a common career move, joined a bank.
Yeah, so there was a BNZ branch in Featherston. It was a collision of a whole bunch of really useful circumstances that got me out of home. From Mum and Dad's perspective, it got me out of home. And it was great. I loved it. I was there for 18 months. Just a lot of fun. And I look back on those days with very fond times.
Now, then along came what I regard as an epiphany, right?
Yes.
Technology sort of landed on you. You've been a great a technology man ever since, right?
Pretty much.
Tell us about some of the real highlight, probably the most highlight that you've had with regards to some of the government work that you were doing.
Yeah, so when I moved to the BNZ North End, if somebody wanted a balance, you stuck their information into a computer, whereas over in Featherston, you went and looked up the ledger. And this was amazing. So having access to that level of technology, I thought, gosh, there's got to be a huge future in this. And so I actually ended up taking a job at New Zealand Post a short while later, which actually had much more of a computer bent, but quite different to these days. So the department I worked in what was the post office then, it became New Zealand Post, had one computer per floor. And you had to book the computer in half-hour segments. And the Lotus 123 boot disk, which gave you access to the spreadsheet flavour of the day, was locked in the manager's office. And so at the start of your half an hour, you had to go and get the boot disk, you'd put it in, there'd be a timer that told you when your half an hour was up, and the computer then moved to the next person. And that's just the way we did it. And computers were very, very expensive. And so I looked for opportunities within the post office that gave me more and more exposure to technology, and I was approached to assist in developing what they called their customer care database, which was basically a database of all of their big customers and how much money they were spending. And I jumped at it.
Great.
And I loved it.
Great.
And then one thing led to another, and I decided I actually wanted some skin in the game, so left the post office, got involved in a franchise of computer retailers in Wellington, ended up, I think, with 4 or 5 stores there, working for a couple of business partners who were based out of Hamilton, and then decided, actually, I know enough about this and I'm good enough at this to actually go out on my own. And so moved to the Wairarapa, back to the Wairarapa, to Masterton this time, and set up a software distribution company, which in the end we had offices in Sydney, Masterton and Bath in the UK.
In the UK. Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, and while we were doing this stuff with the 3 offices around the world, we developed some technology which was very new in its day. I don't know if you can remember, Barry, when 0900 services were introduced in New Zealand, and you could use an 0900 service for all sorts of illicit activities and downloading software in my case. Right. And so we managed to, I guess, evolve that 0900 service so that it could be meaningfully used in the software space. And we were the first in the world to do that.
Great. Now, Russ, I'd like to talk a little bit about Freemasonry now, if we can.
Sure.
The only reason I'd like to do this is because I know in the past, not that long ago, you wrote a great paper. It was five-page paper on the future of Freemasonry. I know we haven't got time tonight to delve into it, even though I'd love to, but there's a couple of, I wonder if you can summarise a couple of major points in that paper, because I know, in my view, it's actually groundbreaking, to be frank, for the future of Freemasonry.
But it was really predicated on some research that was done overseas that said, actually, do you know, most men who enjoy being a Freemason do that because of the fellowship and the fraternity, and that actually only a small percentage, maybe only as many as 10%, are really into the ritual or really into the education and the esoteric and really into the charity. And even though as a lodge you might have 15 or 20 guys that bask in the reflected glory of the great charitable works your lodge does, there's normally only 1 or 2 guys that do it.
Yeah.
And so knowing also that our numbers are decreasing, and we still have a challenge with too many buildings. It seemed to me that if we were going to be reading the tea leaves about what the impact of those numbers would mean in 4 or 5 years, essentially what it would mean is it would still have lots of guys who are interested in going to lodge to experience the fellowship and the fraternity, and not too many wanting to take office, deliver charges and do other work in the lodge. Even though collectively within a district or in a locality you might have enough collectively to do that for a single lodge. Yeah. And so the paper really talks about ways that we can harness and leverage every man's individual love within Freemasonry to create outcomes for new candidates that are life-changing. And for me, some of the things that are life-changing for a new candidate are exemplary ritual, being in a purpose-built building that's warm, and when being embraced into Freemasonry, looking around and seeing a room full of men,
Exactly.
some of whom hopefully they know. And while we have lots of lodges in New Zealand today creating those wow experiences for candidates, it's probably the exception rather than the rule.
You see, and also too, I think you'd agree that some of the newer, especially the younger members coming in, their whole ability to learn things is quite different than what it used to be, and perhaps people my age. You know, we used to sit and actually learn things and read things, whereas today's men today, I mean, they often don't know the telephone number of their spouse.
Well, they don't have time, and in actual fact, it's funny you should say that actually, because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we've got 6 kids, and a few of them are in different parts of the world, but as often as possible we try and get as many of them together as we can, once a month or every 6 weeks. And we were talking about this very thing last time we met, and I said to our eldest boy, "What's my phone number?" And he said, "Well, it's in my phone." And I said, "Yeah, but what is it?" He said, "Well, what a stupid question, it's in my phone." They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know their own phone number often.
That's true. That's honestly true. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and so to expect those guys in a world which is quite different, I know that my daughters who are married have far less demarcation lines between what's acceptable for their husbands to do and not to do than we did. Husbands do everything. That means washing the nappies, it means cooking, it means cleaning. There are no traditional roles anymore. You all pitch in and do what you need to do. So the time that I used to have 35 years ago to learn ritual is gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
You see, also too, we will probably, with your permission, put up put up the link,
sure,
to the paper, because if they do read it, I'm sure they'll get the gist of actually what we wanted to talk about if we had time. But I believe you're also adding to that, aren't you? You're thinking even further that maybe it's not quite as simple as first written down, because we are sort of seeing a bit of a pullback from people, which is a natural thing at times.
And interestingly, from overseas. So because the paper's on all of the divisional websites, Freemasons New Zealand divisional websites in New Zealand, they are accessible to anyone in the world. They're public. And I've maybe had 25 emails from different jurisdictions over the last 5 years, and a few of those have said, "Hey, look, this is a great nirvana. What we've got at the moment we know doesn't work, but can you cut us something that kind of fits in the middle, because it's a bit of a step too far." And so the latest concept is really around establishing local lodges into guilds where they can, test the water with the concept that we refer to as the lodge of working, without actually going to the full-blown version. And the reason for that really is that the greatest barrier that we see with lodges adopting this new style of operating is, frankly, tribalism. They don't want to be the lodge.
We've always done it this way. It should always be this way.
Yeah. I mean, we don't mind coming and helping you, but it has to be under our charter and with our number. And that tribalism isn't conducive to giving us the outcomes that we want.
Quite so.
And the outcome we want is a new Mason sharing that experience with 100 other men.
Beautiful. Fantastic. I mean, I really think it's really groundbreaking, to be frank. Now, in your division, you really have been quite passionate, haven't you, with regards to charitable work? You've done a terrific sort of charitable activity. Tell us a little bit about why it's so successful.
10 years ago, actually, we had our first introduction to the Big Buddy charity in Auckland through another lodge, actually, in Wellington, who one of the Masons down there had got very interested in Big Buddy. And it immediately resonated with me, because the concept of Big Buddy is to take at-risk teenage boys who don't have a male role model in their lives and associate them with a man for 2 hours a week, where the man, after being suitably vetted, goes and spends 2 or 3 hours with that boy. It could be kicking around a ball, it could be helping pave some concrete or putting up a fence, and with nothing deliberate other than teaching that boy how to be a man by being around a man. So Big Buddy would claim to take at-risk teenage boys and turn them into good young men. And a lot of those boys, when I first got involved, I thought, oh, Dad's in jail, or Dad's in no hoper.
Dad's just not around.
Dad died of cancer, or Dad died of So these aren't boys that have got bad dads. These are boys that have got no dads.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so if you then look at our philosophy, which is to take good men and make them better, isn't that a magic synergy between those two objectives? And so we ran our first whiskey tasting night in Wellington.
Man's drink. Oh, and a woman's drink. Let's not cover that one.
10 years ago, we had 24 people there, and we raised $3,000. We've been running them ever since, and for the last 7 years, the tickets have sold out well prior. And so in the 10 years we've been running it with the assistance of the Freemasons charity, we have now raised $267,000.
Which is fantastic.
So so when you work it out, we have about 60 men attend each event, and we raise $30,000. That's an amazing amount of money.
That is.
And Big Buddy talked to us about the impact that we've had on keeping young boys out of jail and what the cost or the savings to the economy has been.
Of course.
So I'm very passionate about that, and I'm very passionate about the fact that we can do it, not anonymously, but one of the values of Freemasons charitable work, I believe, is that it shouldn't be about being a hero. It should be about doing the right thing at the right time for the right organisation.
Marvellous. Well, look, I just know that you've got a big area now to cover. You're from Taranaki to Gisborne and all the way down to Wellington. It's a huge area, like all the other ones. And so, we on the show, we wish you the best, of course, and
Thank you.
I'm sure that you are going to look forward to it, and I'm sure that your time as District Grand Master will sort of rub off even more to everybody in your area. And so we congratulate you, and we think that's a great job done, and thank you very much for being on the show with us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
And 2 days' time, you'll be RW instead of VW.
I can't wait.
Good on you. Thanks, Russ.
Thank you.
Bye. On our second to last program for this whole year, I have the best seat in the house because I'm about to interview the Grand Master of New Zealand, most wishful brother Mark Winger, and in 2 days' time you will give up that chains and the robe and the apron and everything to your successor, and it is absolutely a great delight that you've come to speak with us today. I know that you've gone over. It's a sad occasion, to be quite frank, for me. You've had a great term, and I know that there's been too many highlights for us to go over. We've done them before. So what I would like to do is I'd like to do sort of 10 quick-fire questions, about a minute each, and I would love at the end of that time for you just to have a moment to say what you'd like to say at the end of your term. Are you happy with that?
I'd be delighted to do that. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I think the promotion that Face TV have done for Freemasons New Zealand is outstanding. And when I started the Speak Up campaign, I think it's fair to say I never in my wildest dreams thought that we'd be on TV on a regular basis highlighting some of the Freemasons and the wider Masonic family through Face TV. So I'm absolutely delighted with what you and Face TV are bringing to Freemasons New Zealand.
Well, thank you very much. That is lovely to hear. It's you started the campaign of Speak Up. It's our little way of doing what we thought would work, and it appears to have worked pretty well. Tell me, what made you join Freemasonry in the first place?
My father passed away when I was 10 years of age, and my uncle, who was a Freemason, became my effective father figure. And when I turned 21, he introduced me to Freemasonry, Lodge Westmere number 333, and in reliance on my uncle and his integrity, I joined Freemasonry.
In your time as Grand Master the last 3 years, what do you think has been the biggest challenge that Freemasonry has gone through as an organisation?
Undoubtedly, introducing the Speak Up campaign has invited Freemasons across the country to talk about Freemasonry. And Freemasons are challenged by what do we say? How do we talk about Freemasonry? And I was asked early on in the piece to say, you tell us what to say and we'll say it. Yeah. And I've said, no, that's not how it works. You've got to speak from your heart. I was at a lodge meeting last night and we had a number of special features of the meeting. We had a grandfather as the deputy master The master was his grandson, and his father was the IPM.
Fantastic.
Now, for Freemasonry, that's fantastic. 3 generations of one family involved in a lodge. Now,
One meeting.
what other organisation in the country could boast such figures?
And I'm sure, especially with everybody wanting to be there.
So when you speak up about Freemasonry, it's a matter of talking from your heart about what feature appealed to you.
Correct. What do you think you're missed most in this Grand Master role that you've had this 3 years?
One thing I've done as Grand Master, I've been keen to involve our entered apprentices and our fellow craft Freemasons in any presentations or any promotions that I were doing in the lodge. And to see the awe when you get a young man who's just joined our organisation suddenly assisting the Grand Master in a promotion, it is absolutely wonderful.
I've seen you do that, and it is special for those people.
And they remember, and they
really is.
remember.
Tell me, what do you think is the biggest challenge Freemasonry faces in the future, and how prepared do you think the organisation is to actually meet those challenges?
Well, I think with the Speak Up campaign, it's only been going 3 years, and I know the incoming Grand Master is going to be continuing that program because it's a good one and it works well. So we will be attracting young men into our organisation. Now, I think the challenge we've got is to ignite that spark in their breast so that they love Freemasonry. They put into Freemasonry what our elders have given over many years, and then they will become Freemasons. They will understand what the organisation really is about, and like you and I, we love our Freemasonry. We have to get our young members involved in it.
Now, you've been around the country, all over the country, and I know that you would have mixed with many, many Freemasons, so this question you may not be able to answer accurately. What do you think is the biggest misconception the public have about Freemasonry?
I think traditionally we've been seen as a secret society and one which is almost exclusively for men. Now, the Speak Up campaign is addressing the secrecy, and I think over the last 3 years the media results that we've had from our media managers indicates the public are getting more accepting of Freemasonry. They know more about us, they understand what we do, and they're impressed with the good that we're doing in our communities. So that's breaking down. Yeah. The fact that we are seen as a men's organisation, that's another of these images that we have. The reality is we are a man's organisation. However, we involve our ladies in our refectories, our charitable activities. We have lady almoners. There's lots of things that our lady folk assist the men in Freemasonry.
Now, apart from the time it takes, what do you think has been the most difficult part of being Grand Master?
I think I'm based in Auckland, so if I was not the Grand Master, I would have been at liberty to visit any lodge at any time and enjoy the camaraderie and the brotherhood.
Great.
However, being a Grand Master, you can only go to a lodge when you're officially invited, and when you're officially invited, you take your retinue, you have your escort party that comes with the Grand Master. There's a degree of formality and protocol that comes with the office. So I think over the last 3 years, my visiting in Auckland, my home district, has actually been quite low because I can't simply grab my gear and go off to a lodge meeting. So I'm looking forward to getting back to a bit of normality.
Great. Speaking of the new Grand Master, is there, and I say this nicely, is there any advice that you would like to give him or that you would want to give him about this role?
The incoming Grand Master has been my Deputy Grand Master for 3 years. He and I have worked closely together for 3 years. He knows how I work, he knows my approach, so I think I can safely rely on the new Grand Master forming his own views, his own direction and his own ideas. Having said that, I'm not expecting anything radically different from what we've done for the last 3 years.
Now, with a little bit extra time, what are you looking forward to doing?
At this stage, I'm not committing myself to anything. I'm being invited to accept various roles and to do various chores, but I'm just going to let the dust settle and then early in the new year I'll look at what options are available. At this stage I've agreed that I'll be the chairman of the Freemasons Foundation, which is a charity based in Auckland supporting Masonic objectives, and I'm delighted to take that role on. But apart from that, it's a matter of just let the dust settle and let's see what comes next year.
Well, Grand Master, on behalf of the Speak Up TV show and the crew and things that have been doing, you really have been very supportive of our show, and we really do appreciate it. As your term does now come to an end in a couple of days' time, I'd love you to have the opportunity to just say a few words to the audience we have. And so, ladies and gentlemen, the current, soon-to-be past Grand Master. Mark, I'd love you to say a few words.
Thank you, Barry. And can I first acknowledge that I'm the captain on the bridge, but like all good captains, I can wave my hands and I can spout the words, but I need a crew to actually make the boat progress. And I'm delighted over these last 3 years. I've had a board of general purposes that have been keen to listen to argument, to adopt policies and to lead our organisation forward. I've had 3 Divisional Grand Masters who have managed our 3 divisions, and they have run the divisions in accordance with the policies set by our board, and they've done a wonderful job. Our District Grand Masters, who have been the men at the coalface to assist lodges and the brethren operate their activities. They have done a fantastic job. And when I look across the country and see how these District Grand Masters have led their brethren, I am in awe. I think they've all done a wonderful job, and I thank them for that. So when I say that I've had a wonderful 3 years, well, I have. I've loved it being the Grand Master. However, I also understand totally how I can't do anything on my own. It involves a whole raft of people, including, of course, the lodges and the brethren themselves, who have adopted the call to speak up for Freemasonry, and they have done that in their communities in their own ways. And as I said earlier, the Face TV program is just one example of how people can speak up for Freemasonry.
Grand Master, thank you very much. And on behalf of all the Freemasons who have ever been in a lodge that you've attended and you've spoken to either brethren in the lodge, we've always enjoyed every time that you've been. You're a great orator. We love hearing the things that you say. It's always a pleasant time when you've been there. And so, on behalf of myself anyway, congratulations on a wonderful term. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it.
Well, that's our show for this week. Don't forget, if you'd like to know more about Freemasonry, and you won't find it in a Dan Brown's book, but you will by going to the Grand Lodge website, which is freemasonsnz.org. In the meantime, if you've been thinking, planning, or asking questions about joining Freemasonry, we have a website for this very purpose. It's simply welcometofreemasonry.co.nz. We hold a regular dinner experience where you can meet other Freemasons before making a decision to join. So once again, thanks for joining us. See you next week.